The Free People Show, episode 19.
The Free People Show is a show about the practice and politics of being free. Free from government, free from coercion, and free to be yourself. Host Phil Anderson is a libertarian, a Christian, and was the kind of kid who, according to his grandmother, just wouldn't shut up. Phil and his co-hosts will talk politics, but also life in general, challenging you, entertaining you, persistently rapping on the back door of orthodox two-party politics, sparing nobody and taking no prisoners, maybe even making you laugh. Tweet us at @FreePeopleShow with questions and suggestions, or comment on Facebook during or after the show. For information about being a guest, hosting a live broadcast, or sponsoring the show, email info@freepeopleshow.com. Thanks for listening. Now, here's your host, Phil Anderson.
Welcome to the Free People Show, episode 19. We're here live from Miles's basement. Thanks for joining us. You can, of course, find us at freepeopleshow.com as well as on Facebook. If you go to our website, freepeopleshow.com, you can see all the other platforms on which to find us. I won't list them, but all the usual suspects. If you like to listen to podcasts or even things live occasionally, like in the case of TuneIn, you can find us there. My special thanks to co-host Patrick Baird and Miles Kristen, engineer Samuel Anderson, business agent Ron DePau, show webmaster Dustin Dryfurst, and show contributors Jeff Korch, Jay Ranchad, John Migloch, and the Libertarian Party of Dane County. We got a lot to talk about tonight. First, I'll introduce my co-hosts. For those of you who don't know them, Miles Kristen is a video journalist and activist for government transparency, among other things. He also dumped a beer on a politician once, too, I think. Somebody asked me about that last week. Is that the guy that dumped the beer on so-and-so?
Allegedly.
Well, you haven't really denied it, I don't think, either.
Yeah, I did a beer on a guy once. I had it coming, really.
Was it a politician?
No, just
okay.
a guy in a bar.
Just a guy.
And for the record, it was 3 politicians.
Okay, well, Robin Voss and who else?
Representative Scott Souter, Representative John Nygren. A security guard might have gotten a little beer on him.
I'm sure they all deserved it. Anyway, Miles is an activist for government transparency, among other things. He's the founder of the Wisconsin International Radio and the owner and curator of Yellow Rose Gallery at 122 State Street in lovely Madison, Wisconsin. He is everywhere, knows just about everything, and is unafraid of telling the truth about whoever, wherever. Welcome, Miles.
Thank you for having me.
Also with us tonight, Patrick Baird is the treasurer of the Libertarian Party of Wisconsin, also the treasurer of the Libertarian Party
Libertarian
Pragmatic Caucus, the National Caucus, as well as... Are you still the Web IT chair? No, you're not.
No, I'm
he's
not.
no longer
Happily,
the Web IT chair.
happily
I need to
chair,
edit the intro for this because he's no longer that. We folded that into a different committee. He was the campaign manager, or one of the campaign managers for Anderson for U.S. Senate. He's the author and creator of the Libertarian Federalist, which you can find at libertarianfederalist.com and on Facebook. He's also the author of a series of spy novels called The Beatnik Spy, a true Renaissance man.
Thank you.
Welcome, Patrick. And Patrick's going to kick it off tonight. You know, we published that we were going to talk about ages of majority, the rights that people have or are rather restricted based on how old they are. This idea of how old does someone need to be a legal person? What does that mean? There are a lot of various different ways that you can look at it based on sex, forming contracts, serving in the military, drinking, smoking, marrying, getting contraceptives, getting good prices on car insurance. But before we get to that, Patrick was watching Jimmy Kimmel last night.
Well, I wasn't watching Jimmy Kimmel, but I caught it on the news tonight because, of course, the news made a big deal out of it. For those of you who haven't heard about it or seen the video, last night on his show, Jimmy Kimmel revealed that his newborn son had been born with a serious heart defect, had to have open heart surgery. It was a very serious issue. His wife apparently also had a difficult time with the delivery and had some medical issues. And he had a very tearful relating of the story, what happened with his son, and turned it into an equally tearful and emotional pitch against pre-existing conditions. Basically, he made the point: if my son was born with a pre-existing condition, why can't we all get along and support Obamacare? And as soon as I heard that, it took me about 5 seconds to digest it and realize, pardon my French, that it was complete bullshit. Because, first of all, a newborn is not going to be subject to pre-existing conditions unless you don't have any insurance. Now, he's Jimmy Kimmel. I probably paid pretty well to host the show there on ABC. So there's no excuse for him not to have had health insurance if he didn't have health insurance. If he did have health insurance, then his son would not have been. Anyone with insurance, your newborn is not. It doesn't matter how sick they are when they're born. They're not going to have a pre-existing condition if they were covered on your insurance from the moment they were born. Which
if mom was covered, or dad, if mom was covered, dad was covered.
If mom
both?
was covered, if dad was covered, it doesn't matter. You know, you're covered from the moment you're born, and there's no pre-existing condition. So his angle of trying to wrangle in pre-existing condition issue into his son's issue was complete nonsense. And you know, it's a typical of the debate that we have in this country around healthcare and Obamacare and what's going to replace Obamacare, if anything should.
And the debate we had on this show just a couple of weeks ago too.
And what I've been trying to do on my blog, The Libertarian Federalist, in the last month or so is I've had a series of articles talking about different aspects of healthcare from a libertarian perspective. And the question I asked myself when I began this is, you know, what answer do we need to have as libertarians to these issues, the issues of medical coverage, pre-existing conditions, all of these related issues, other than what some libertarians will do is say, well, we just get rid of all the government and let the magical private markets come in and fix everything. You know, I happen to believe that's a naive view, that it's a much more complicated issue than that. But at least I'm trying to look at it from an educated standpoint, and I'm asking pointed questions. People like Jimmy Kimmel, who, you know, I'm sorry, he doesn't know anything at all about the issue, I would gather. All of the people watching it are going, oh, it's so true. Babies are born with pre-existing conditions. What kind of awful people are the Republicans that they'd make babies die? You know, it's the old babies die argument that's been thrown at Republicans forever. And I don't want to get too far in the weeds defending Republicans here.
No, certainly
but,
not.
You know, come on. The truth of the matter is, and in another article that I read about Jimmy Kimmel's statement, they tried to make the point that that if we got rid of what Trump wants to do with Trump Care 2 or Paul Ryan is the
one that they haven't voted on yet.
The one that they can't find the votes for yet,
right,
which is a whole other hilarious issue.
Sure.
But what they want to do is transfer the authority to make rules for pre-existing conditions down to the states, which in principle I support. One of the things that I've been doing in this series with my blog is promoting the idea that the federal government ought to get out of healthcare regulation almost entirely. There's no real reason for it to be involved in, and it should go down to the states, and we should have as much innovation and variety at the state level and among insurance companies as possible so that people have as many choices as possible for their health care. And what this author was trying to say in this article about Kimmel was that if we allowed the states to say, for instance, there is no longer a guarantee of no pre-existing conditions from Obamacare, that all of the insurance companies would immediately remove maternity and newborn coverage from all of their policies.
And that the states wouldn't do anything about it?
First of all, the states could still mandate that if they wanted to.
Sure.
But second of all, they're not going to do that because health insurance companies are no different than any other business. Mm-hmm. They're in the business of selling products and services to people. And do you think they're going to be so stupid to say to the hundreds of millions of people, the families in this country that need health insurance coverage, we're not going to cover your babies or your pregnant wife?
They probably won't do too much business that way.
You know,
it's ridiculous.
I mean, that's ridiculous. That if they're just waiting for the minute where they can just drop all those sick babies and pregnant women off their insurance policies. It's totally, anybody who says that doesn't understand how health insurance works. They don't understand how business works. You know, they're a business. They're in the business of selling insurance policies to people, and of course, they're going to offer whatever people want. If families want full coverage, they will sell you a policy that has no deductible, has no copays, covers everything. But guess what?
it's not going to be cheap.
It's like buying a car with every option. It's
right.
going to
and
cost
free
you.
oil changes forever and ever. And
the free oil changes really aren't free. They're
exactly.
folded into the cost of the
paid
car.
for them already.
So, this is a ridiculous idea that if we get rid of this guarantee of no pre-existing conditions in Obamacare, that suddenly babies and pregnant women are all going to die. And, it reveals a real lack of understanding of the issue. And it's just, I had to get it off my chest because it was one of those things that's on the news. And of course, CBS played it like with violins playing in the background. Oh, the babies. Oh, the babies.
And then they took them out of the incubators and put them on the floor.
They kicked grandma off the cliff, too. Everybody who's frail and weak, they just boot off the edge of the cliff.
So that was the dumbness of the week. Well, the second dumbest thing of the week. The first dumbest thing of the week was Professor Trump lecturing us about the Civil War, but I don't think we're going to get into that tonight.
Well, we could. It sounds like we're headed that way. But one of the things I think is interesting in your point, too, is that people rely so much on the federal government. I would think, that especially in states like maybe California or New York, that people might see a clearer path to getting the sort of regulations that they want about healthcare by working with their state government. If their state was free to do it, those states that are progressive
regulate however they want.
Somebody who's Democrat or liberal, not new liberal or progressive in a different state, Texas, for example, might not feel as safe and might want the federal government to come in and sort of step on Texas's right to make its own regulations. But Hollywood's in California, and there's lots of people in New York too that have this. They're part of the same media frenzy of we need this huge federal government bureaucracy to look out for everybody, otherwise they'll be dead and fall off cliffs and not whatever. But their state government, they have a lot more influence on because they're closer to it. And they just need to go to Albany or Sacramento, not Washington.
I guarantee you, one of the things I did in my past is I worked in regulatory compliance for a health insurance company, and my job was to respond to complaints from state departments of insurance. And I can tell you from my experience, the level of regulation varies widely across this country. Wisconsin, for instance, is a very heavy-handed regulatory state, not surprisingly. Florida is not.
Even with Republicans more or less in power for
it may have changed under
7 years now
rule,
or whatever.
But 15 years ago when I was doing it, they and Colorado were the two toughest states to deal with in terms of the things they would require of you, or the fact of Colorado was so terrible. If somebody complained, you automatically gave them whatever they want because the state insurance department would make you give them whatever they wanted, regardless of the facts. But the point is that if you don't if we had a model, which Trump Care sort of does, where the states could decide, what gets covered, what doesn't get covered, how pre-existing conditions work, whether to get rid of regulation altogether, we could have New Hampshire, let's say, that got rid of all regulations on insurance. And, our good friend Steven is going to be moving there soon, and he could buy a young guy, single, could buy any kind of coverage you want. He could buy coverage that didn't include maternity, for instance, and get a cheaper policy.
And as long as he didn't get pregnant, he'd be okay.
Right. But, here in Wisconsin, we're probably going to be stuck with a heavy degree of regulation in our insurance policies. But you know what? If you don't like it, you can move. That's the wonderful thing about the United States of America. It's easier to move
all over the country now than it ever has been.
Companies can make decisions on where they locate their businesses based on how expensive the health insurance is in that state. I think that's a great idea. I think we should be in competition for California. Say, we're going to we want to get out of California because it's a tax hell, because all of our employee insurance is so expensive, it's bankrupting us. Let's go to New Hampshire, or God forbid someday Wisconsin, that would be more competitive.
One of the ways that plays out in the media, we've just got about a minute left to the break, in the media is when we see sports free agents deciding where they're going to live and how their contracts are negotiated. Quite often,
a good example.
a team in Texas or in Florida where there's not
now the Raiders are moving to Vegas. They got no income tax either.
That's another example where all of a sudden, when when two different teams or three different teams are negotiating for the services of a high price free agent, their agents take that into consideration and make decisions based on that. Not only locating where the person wants to live or with his family or whatever, but making decisions based on how much of my money am I actually going to be able to keep.
That's a lot of money.
And that's millions of dollars, so that's why we see it so played out. So we'll keep talking about insurance after the break. We also want to get to our topic about ages, because it sort of plays in. A lot of the age restrictions are about things like contraception and being able to marry and things like that. So we'll be back shortly at the Free People Show at freepeopleshow.com after the break. We'll be right back.